Good morning. I had asked Superintendent Pons whether he wanted me to do this in Spanish or English. Are there any Spanish teachers here? All the others, please get a set of headphones. I'd much rather speak from this mic. Those of you who know me, and most of you probably don't know me, know that I'm reasonably impatient. I can't stand still. During board meetings, there is a seat reserved for me at the dais with the board members, which I don't occupy. I usually put people up there. There's something about my constitution that does not allow me to sit still. First of all, good morning to all of you. It's a great day in the state of Florida. It's a great day in Leon County. Anytime that we celebrate teachers, teaching, public education, and the most important craft in American history called education, period. We do this today, and we should do this every single day. We do it now at a particularly interesting time in the history of America. You may have noticed that public education is, some would argue, under attack. And I submit to you very humbly, as a teacher, he's absolutely right. I'm the self-appointed principal of two schools that I created. I wanted to create an elementary school and a high school in the same area. So I decided to create schools in my central administrative building. This was after I reduced administration by a staggering 58%. So 58% fewer people in just about 3 years. What we did with the funds is we reinvested them back into the classroom. And we stand today, Miami-Dade, as the only large urban school system in America to have navigated through the worst economic recession that any one of us has ever lived through without ever firing a single teacher for economic reasons, protecting the elective programs, protecting foreign language programs, art and music. When he talked about having had to cut $2 billion from the budget, folks, that's billion with a B. But if you follow your values and principles, and you know what your priorities ought to be, and you keep the child and teachers concentrically around what's important in your budget, and you force values to drive your budget rather than allowing the budget to define your values, you come out of this. In fact, I submit to you that an economic recession may in fact be your friend because it allows you, it forces you to create efficiencies. There are values-based. Those efficiencies lead to innovation, and innovation, if you do it right, leads to district-wide transformation. So what I'd like to talk to you about today is a little bit about what transformation has meant in Miami-Dade and the scalability potential of that transformation for every single urban district or not across America. And we're doing this work, as I said, at a particularly interesting time because public education is under attack. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent. It makes no difference if you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian. Public education in this country has been the unifying element that has connected all of us. Short of church, a synagogue, or a temple, public education, the schoolhouse, has been the one entity where every single child comes in, sits down, and from up above, they all look the same. They all learn together, eye to eye, shoulder to shoulder. None of them standing or sitting above anybody else. The only institution in America where that happens. So bringing about an erosion, unwarranted criticism of public education or principals or above all teachers is, in my opinion, tearing the fabric of our flag. It is inflicting a moral wound to the Constitution of our nation. It is tantamount to sacrilege to what we believe in. What shall we do next as a nation? Criticize our parents, denigrate our grandparents. Teachers are the foundation of democracy. Show me a nation of ignorance, and I'll show you a nation of intolerance. Show me a nation that does not revere and respect its teachers. I will show you a nation that is regressional in its thinking. We need acceleration of learning, but we also need, at the same time, a regression back to reason. A regression back to reason. A regression back to policy of education that's driven not by policy think tanks, driven by 12-year-olds still wet behind their ears, but by peer-reviewed research focused on what works. by the people, for the people, including the little people. You see, we are not a selective institution. We take everybody, every single body. We do not have the luxury of being ice cream makers, where we control the input, the best cream and sugar, the crystallized sugar, the best berries to make berry ice cream. No, we take them all. You see, it's easy to bring about educational reform if you control the inputs. If you control the inputs, you can pretty much determine the what? The outcome. But we take them all. Not everybody in our game takes them all. But we do it. We do it first and foremost because it is the right thing to do. You see, you are the right people. You are the good people. You are the freedom fighters of our generation. Without your voice, there is not a better tomorrow for our kids. So I urge you, keep fighting. Keep telling the truth. Keep elevating the dignity and the humanity of children every single day, because if it is not for you, it will not be done. And if it is not done, our America will stop being our America. Will start becoming somebody else's America. You see, most of you are blessed. You were born into the land of the free, the home of the brave. I am a citizen by choice. I chose to become a citizen of this great country. And I can tell you why I did it. I did it first and foremost because this is a nation of opportunity. This is a nation of hope. This is a nation that reinvents itself every single day, every single generation. Jackie's saying, oh my God, I asked Alberta to come up and talk about educational practice, Common Core, and all that good stuff. You have very qualified people to do that. You have Jackie Pons. I know you have Dr. Marzano going to be speaking to you. You do not need me to preach to you educational policy or the inner workings of acceleration and remediation. You are experts in that. I hope through my conversation to actually go a little bit deeper, to touch your heart. But then again, your teachers, your hearts have been touched. Your hearts have been divinely impacted at the highest level. I know you did not join this industry, this profession for glory, for profit. You did it for a much more richer ambition and drive. You did it because fundamentally you believe. You believe. You believe in kids, you believe in community, you believe in America. Therefore, you are here. I believe that more important than telling you why I have the right to be on this stage, to speak as a superintendent, as a principal, or still as a physics teacher, I should tell you about the reason why I decided to become a citizen of this country. You see, I was not born in a nice little suit. Even though some people who work with me believe I was born into a nice little suit, and I don't take it off even at night. I was born in Lisbon, Portugal, arguably the poorest nation in Western Europe. I was born to a family of 6 kids. I was the middle kid. That explains a lot. First in my family to graduate high school, the only one to go to college. And I say this because, and I tell this story to a lot of my kids in Miami-Dade, it's because, number one, we should never judge anybody at face value. There's always a much deeper, interesting story. And judging at face value usually leads you to prejudging people, and prejudgments lead to prejudice, and prejudice leads to inequitable, if not unequal, treatment on the basis of early judgments. We as educators don't do that. You see, in my family, there were 6 of us plus my parents. We grew up very, very poor. We grew up in a one-room apartment, not a one-bedroom apartment, a one-room apartment, without running water, without a bathroom or a kitchen. In the floor of what here you would call a housing project, there was a kitchen and a restroom for everybody. I'm the father now of a 21-year-old girl who takes showers about 4 times a day. The morning shower, the after-workout shower, the after-Apple computer shower, the Wii shower, and then the evening shower. The most showered people in the history of America. We took maybe a shower once a week. Once a week. What my parents lacked in formal education, they had the education of 6th grade. That's combined. Neither one of them made it past 3rd grade. But what they lacked in formal education, they made up with in morals and values and principles, love, passion, and compassion. Something that unfortunately has departed the psyche of many of our so-called leaders across our country. At a time when, rather than engaging in productive, rational, transformational discourse and speech and policy debate, they engage in rhetorical conversations that seek not to unite and unify, but actually to separate. It seems that we're building two Americas. And I'll tell you, I don't know about you, but I do not know where I fit. But I can tell you this, I fit in this country. I fit in this nation. I fit in these communities because I look in people's eyes and I see the same look of sadness and confusion that somehow America is departing us. But we will not depart America, for we are teachers. We are the moral fiber. We are the freedom fighters. We are the ones who will awaken this new consciousness in our nation. At a time when there's this obsession with international rankings, this true obsession with who we are, where we're going to be, who do we have to match ourselves up against and compare ourselves to. First, we start by ranking school districts, and then ranking schools, and then ranking nations. It's getting a little insane. Now, mistake not what I'm saying. I believe in accountability. I believe that you need to be able to measure whether or not kids are learning and be able to report that to our stakeholders. But accountability for the sake of accountability as an entity unto itself is morally wrong. And when you attach that entity that is potentially morally wrong to a profit-making venture, that benefits some but not all, and children and teachers may not necessarily be at the core of that benefit, then it is ethically wrong. So let me take you back and bust one of the myths that we've all been lied to recently. People now relish in this comparison, these rankings, where America's kids stand today. By the way, it's interesting that the folks who conduct those studies about rankings are the folks who were in school back at a time when America actually fared worse. So, if you go back to the 1960s, the first time that rankings were produced, America was not halfway in the middle. America was all the way at the bottom of about 12 nations that tested kids. All the way at the bottom, 12th or 13th. Today, we're 25th, 26th in math, reading, science of a much longer list. We've actually moved up. Now, we didn't expect that the world would remain stagnant, right? I mean, nations had to continue to improve. This idea that somehow everybody would wait for us to get better is insane. So the folks who today criticize public education actually scapegoat what you and I do every single day by glorifying our positioning and our standing in the world are just wrong. Now, don't take it from me. This was actually spoken about and written by a true conservative, a man by the name of Pat Buchanan. And he said, this is the biggest lie that we're telling our folks. America today is a better nation of better people than yesterday. Folks, the first time that rankings were produced was at a time, an era in America where people, as I see you today, could not sit side by side. I mean, after all, I see different folks of different ethnic backgrounds. You could not sit side by side. You could not drink out of the same water fountain. Your kids could not go to school to the same schools. So when I hear that somehow the better days of America have already been lived, that somehow we're a little bit lost where we stand today, we need to go back to the good old days. Good old days for whom? As defined by what? Oh, Jackie, am I getting myself in trouble or am I getting you into trouble? Yeah, well, you got to protect me the way out of here, right? The next thing is this. Here's the next thing. And by the way, these gatherings, I was interviewed by a young lady. She said, why is this important? You know, is motivational, inspirational speeches and convenings, are they important? Because, you know, after the message is done, they don't really last, right? Motivational speeches and inspirational speeches don't last. So why do them? Well, they don't last forever, but neither does bathing. However, we find it appropriate to do it daily. So having the courage to lead and speak the truth and to teach and to love and to hug every single day is a moral imperative. It is more of a moral imperative today than any other time in the history of our nation. When I talk about the fact that America is a little bit lost, but its people aren't, I'm talking about the fact that if you're waiting for somebody to lead you, you will wait for a lifetime. You need to lead. You need to be that candlelight. You need to be the flicker of reasonableness in our communities. You need to speak the truth and vote with courage. Not on the basis of what people tell you on TV, on a basis of what they've done, on a basis of who they are, the values they embrace. Not on the basis of party, but on the basis of conviction and values and principles. We need to be far smarter than we were ever before. In this new digital technology-driven age, we can actually find truth. We can research it. We can look people up. We can Google people. Don't Google me. You'll find some interesting stuff. But we can get to the bottom of things. We can get to the bottom of people's minds and hearts. And that is exactly, my friends, what we need to do. I came here today prepared to do a presentation, but when I saw that I had an ocean of teachers, I decided to do something different. I decided to really speak to your hearts from a teacher to a teacher. When I found out there were dozens of principals here, I decided to speak to your hearts from a principal to a principal. We will lead this state. We will lead this nation. Do not allow anybody to convince you that somehow the better days of America are over. At the same time, let me bust the second myth, is that nobody in the world is doing better work than you are. People talk about Finland as the highest performing nation on earth. Okay, I'm not going to live there. Number one, they do not make Cuban coffee. They serve salmon every single day. They speak a language that seems like coughing. This is my country. And if there's something broken with my country, I am not going to leave it, nor am I going to copy another nation. I mean, think about this. Highest performing nation on earth, according to the rankings, Finland. Singapore and Shanghai, although not nations, a lot of people don't understand that. I mean, Shanghai and Hong Kong are not nations. They're cities as big as nations, but in a much bigger country called China. If you think for a second that the educational standards and the level of proficiency in China is the same as it is in Hong Kong or Shanghai, you're crazy. But we're sold those bills of goods that somehow it's better there. The only place where I know it's better, it's in the Bahamas, because I watch the commercials. And by the way, when in the history of our country have we decided to somehow become a second-rate, cheap imitation of anybody else rather than having the courage to reinvent America into a better version of itself? So we need to do it. Nobody else is going to do it. It is our charge, and not for us, but for the ones who will follow us, our kids. Now, how we do it, that's the tricky part. How do you manage during times of change? How do you somehow win during politically divisive times? How do you accelerate learning and remediate at the same time? How do you lift up the floor at the same time as you expand the ceiling of opportunity? How do you budget during times of need? Well, folks, first and foremost, you need to know who you are, what you stand for. Now, you're blessed. You have a great leader. You have a great board who is here today. A board that shows up for its teachers is the right board. You have a leader who's outspoken and calls out those when they are wrong. You see, in the state of Florida, accountability, through the eyes of some, is not a two-way street. Some hold us accountable, but they themselves need not be accountable to us. A democratic institution in a democratic country is for its people. And ultimately, you are the deciders. You are the ones who judge the performance of those who you elect to serve you, not to serve anything else. You see, we are the people. We're not the profit people. We are bound by higher morals and imperatives than some who speak a good game but show very little. So the mechanics of the transformation during these changing times are key. And I'd like to just put up a couple of things and speak to them very quickly. Number one, you're all here. And you look great. You look great based on a 19th century classroom architecture. One guy speaking, all of you looking at me, sitting geometrically aligned, all looking the same. This, by the way, represents 90% of the classrooms in America today. We need to change that. Kids today do not live, think, listen, educate, consume the way we did. This environment, by the way, is the most threatening, damaging, dulling thing we put before them. So whether we like it or not, whether we're lost in it or not, whether we are the digital immigrants or they are the digital natives, we need to change. We're not going to change them, folks. How many of you are fathers or mothers? Raise your hand, please. I am too. I told you about my 21-year-old daughter. I have the scars on the back to prove it. She's going to school in Atlanta. So if you'd like to have her for the weekends in the summer, let me know. They are different beings. I remember the day I walked into my house and my daughter had her back to me and she was on a computer, a laptop computer, and she had her cell phone on her lap. She had the regular phone, tucked between her ear and her shoulder. She had a little television screen open on her computer. She was texting, she was checking out what was going on Facebook. And she still managed to say, "Hey, Dad, how you doing tonight? What have you done for me lately?" These are incredibly bright, versatile, not even three-dimensional. They operate in a multi-dimensional world. They have perfectly mastered all sensorial inputs simultaneously. They are far better than we were. Same brain, they were just exposed to a different type of stimuli early on. So we cannot complain about it because they're not going to go back. Nobody's going to shut down Facebook. Google is their bloodstream. And they are good at it. They are so darn good. So the way we come together is sort of interesting because it's based on a 19th century architecture of education, still punctuated by Carnegie units, 180 days of schooling a year, 7 hours and 20 minutes, punctuated by annoying as hell bells every 60 minutes. In classrooms that are either too cold or too hot, with furniture that was designed for torture. Actually, it was invented during the years of the Inquisition in Spain. Why? There was a reason for that. Because if you made the seats comfortable in settings like these, you could not keep the kids awake. So you got to keep the seats uncomfortable. We need to change that. You are far too valuable and far too inspirational to be constrained and restricted by the environments in which you have to teach. So we can change that. But to do that, we need to agree on a few things. The very first one is that we all need to embrace a synchronicity of purpose and function. We all need to be here for the same reason. Whether you're a math teacher, a language arts teacher, social studies, or science, we're all here not first and foremost to teach a subject, we're all here to teach a kid, to elevate that child's dignity, to pull up their humanity above all else. And I could not think of a better army of people to do it than you. I could not think of a better army to do it than the teachers of America. Those much beleaguered, recently scapegoated individuals who have been the lifeblood of our nation. So synchronicity of purpose and function is important. Everybody rowing in the same direction. And by the way, not every ocean or sea or body of water you'll row in will be that calm. FCAT 2.0, new sunshine state standards, parkour, everything is coming at us. Race to the top, no child left behind. Everything is coming at you. It is a perfect storm of policy confusion. That too is not going to change. So here's my recommendation. Rather than be engulfed by the incoming tsunami, take up surfing. Do not allow yourselves to be in a position where the wave will take you. Learn quickly how to ride the wave. You are too smart, too capable, too dignified to accept anything other than. So you can do this. The trick here is everybody rides it at the same time in the same way. So everybody makes it safely. Nobody's engulfed and pulled down. Now, I have a theory of action. It's sort of a modified continuous improvement model. And this is where Miami-Dade has done extremely, extremely well. We've been very good at anticipating early on based on specific, nuanced inputs, either policy changes or economic conditions. So as the rest of the state of Florida was waiting for the next greatest thing that Tallahassee would do to us from a policy perspective or budget, and yes, Tallahassee does everything right. I'm not talking about your school system. I'm talking about the other buildings, the strange buildings over there up the street. What we did very well was anticipate early on conditions, economic conditions, educational trends. We analyzed them very, very well. We did the Toyota way, which is you plan for a long time. When you're ready, then you implement very quickly. Why implement very quickly? Well, you and I know. The naysayers, the status quo embracers, if you give them enough time to think and debate, they will bring down any great idea. So in my mind, effective reform is well thought out, well anticipated, well analyzed. You plan for a long time, but then you implement very quickly. Otherwise, the gravitational pull of the status quo will implode any great idea. After you implement, then you actually go back and you assess. Implementation, action, same thing. You assess. Did it work? Did it not work? If it worked, following our theory that if it's good for some, it's good for what? Everyone, you scale it up. You take it to the masses. And then you have a moral obligation, following the good principles of accountability, to actually measure again, assess again. So did it work for all as well as it worked for that pilot program? And then you start all over again. This has worked well in Miami. From an economic perspective, from a student achievement perspective, it has worked well. But then again, we use common sense. We use the things we know work. And you know what works in public education? Effective leaders, effective teachers. Nurturing communities. Effective teachers, effective leaders. That's what we need to invest in. And folks, I know there are a lot of principals here, a lot of teachers. When I say I did not terminate a single teacher for economic reasons for 4 years in a row, we just adopted our budget again. It doesn't say that I did not renew some teachers' contracts for performance. And I think we need to be fair about that and honest. Why should it be any different for us? But we need to be legitimate as well. We cannot leave out those elements and circumstances that some folks refuse to accept as being extremely detrimental and impactful in the lives of kids. So take it from somebody who is a superintendent and a teacher in a district where poverty reaches a 77% level. Those who say that poverty does not impact learning were never poor. Those who say that morning hunger that persists throughout the day does not impact learning were people who have never felt hunger. Those who say that abuse or language disability or a physical or emotional disability do not impact learning are people who have never taught and hugged and loved a child who has these disabilities. That is why I still think it's insane that the rules were recently changed, and we were successful in changing some, but not all. Rules that basically force a child who's only had 1 year of language instruction to sit for an exam side by side with native-born speakers at any grade level. Or a child with disabilities that will have to sit for the same exam with the same standard, albeit with some accommodations, expecting the same outcome. You and I know it's differently. Look, as parents, we know if you're, your father, mother, and you have multiple kids. I only have one. After that great example, I shut down the factory. I say, heck, one more and it'll take over me. She's a great kid, by the way. But if you have more than one child, and the first one starts walking at the age of, let's say, 18 months, and the second one does not start walking until 24 months, you don't criticize that one. You give the same opportunity. You celebrate the day that they walked. And somehow I believe that we're losing a little bit of our humanity. This is where I believe it's accountability gone awry. It's we're forcing somehow a perspective that's not about people, it's about something else, to impact and drive a profession that is about people. And we need to reverse that. Second thing I'd like to talk to you about is what I've done in my district, and I think America needs to do this as far as organizational leadership and the new architecture for a new century of learning. For years, and this is still, by the way, the function of our State Department of Education, for years, non-school site functions and assets, people and what they did, non-school site, were basically focused on compliance. Remember, you were a teacher, you become an assistant principal. With that, now you're in charge of people. And the symbol of power, the walkie-talkie. You got that walkie-talkie, oh man, I got power. I can summon people. Then from assistant principal, you're made a principal. Now this is the interesting thing. Rather than getting a bigger walkie-talkie, actually give you a very cool, tiny little walkie-talkie. And then if you're really good at telling people what to do, then they promote you downtown, big time. And your role now is compliance. You're out there monitoring to see whether people are doing what you believe is important for them to do. And I submit to you, that perspective is wrong. That perspective is wrong. We need to actually achieve this, a shift, a dramatic shift, a tectonic shift. It's not easy. And you don't do it little by little. You actually achieve it in one single day where you say, this is the new architecture for a school system. Is a shift from a compliance-driven system to a supportive or a support-centric system. Supportive of what? Supportive of teaching and learning. Where every single person in a non-school site function, their jobs, their positions are analyzed and their worth is realized on a basis of a direct benefit to kids or teachers or principals in schools. We've gone through this year. It's my third apology to my good friend Jackie Pons. He's got some people downtown and says, why don't you bring this crazy guy out from Miami? It's way hot down there, so their brains boil a little faster. Come up here to tell us that downtown we're not going to have to be support to something? Yes. You actually look at every single company after the dot-com bust. Companies that have survived are companies that have actually gone through this transformation. Now, they're not centric to students teaching and learning, but they're centric to clients. Support the clients. It's all about supporting the client, supporting the stakeholder who needs to understand and use your product. It's forcing people to understand the benefit of that dynamic, that new dynamic, and that new relationship. So I took a reorganization to my board 2 weeks ago where I engaged in what I call a strategic abandonment of assets and functions. Basically what that is every single person whose function did not connect directly to what happens in the school lost his or her job. And this doesn't mean that they necessarily hit the street. What I did is I invited them to go back and work in the school. After all, these were the people who used to come up to me downtown and telling me every single day how much they love kids. So I said, I got you. After all the years of you telling me how much you love kids, I am going to invite you to go spend some time closer to where the kids actually are. So in the process, I threw away our strategic plan, which was about that thick. Now we have but one specific goal, student achievement. I threw away all of those glorified organizational charts with more boxes and arrows and dotted lines between people. And I say, if it's all about the kids, then the chart has got to look like this. It has to be a concentric organization. And I apologize for the person who's in the nosebleed section all the way in the back, if you can't see it. But look, it's all about workforce development. It's all about economic opportunity. It's all about building a community. And the fundamental responsibility of the people who actually do that work, it falls on teachers. So the community of learners is impacted by what happens in these inner circles. It's all about teachers. It's all about leaders. I don't want somebody to feel that important over a title. I'm in the process of actually abolishing protocol in the school system. It needs to be a concentric organization where the focus of interest relies on what's best for kids, what's best for teachers, what's best for leaders at the school site, and everybody else. It is their responsibility. It is existentially necessary for them to be connected to this new organization. The other thing we decided to tackle, and this started about 3.5 years ago. In fact, when I became superintendent, my first welcome to the superintendency was, the system is bankrupt. You have $4 million in reserve to protect a $6 billion budget. And you have 9 schools that are going to be shut down by the state for performance. And I don't know about you, but I don't like people who speak to me, with sugar-coated words. I appreciate honesty. Every single one of these 9 schools was in a predominantly African-American neighborhood. All of these were iconic, historical, black schools in Miami-Dade. And by the way, all of these schools won championships every single year. When he was a basketball coach, he used to play them and lose. No, sometimes he won. But these were great schools. The principals are so proud they brought in the championship rings. But particularly in the high schools, 92% of the kids in high school could not read or compute at grade level. And if you want to condemn somebody to a life of poverty, which I know very well, let them leave high school not knowing how to read or compute. So this is a moral imperative. You have to fix it. And to fix it, you need courage. Not just courage for some, courage for everyone. My first action, yes, I am not proud to say it, but it was a harsh reality. I fired 9 principals in my first board meeting. Since that day to now, we have 400 principals. I have replaced 60% of all principals. Not an easy thing to do, and I do not take pride. I am not a Superman hero, nor do I want that title. That's for somebody else who creates controversy to get a book deal. But sometimes tough issues require tough medicine. What we cannot abandon is our own humanity. It cannot be something to punish somebody. It's something to elevate the quality of teaching, the quality of education in our communities. The next thing we did is we created a system called the Educational Transformation Office. I recruited the best mind in this business. He happened to have been at that time the Deputy Chancellor of Education for the state. But prior to that, he was one of my remarkable principals to come and be the assistant superintendent for this work. And we tiered schools on the basis of performance. And we allocated resources in an inequitable way because the need was not equal. And the way to address an inequitable problem is by assessing and then allocating resources. By resources, we're talking about strategic investment of the right program, the right people, and the funding based on the performance of schools, giving a great deal of latitude to the new leaders that were recruited for these schools. We also ushered in, not through imposition, but negotiation, compensation differentiation for teachers and principals, negotiated with our union, not through imposition. And last year we had teachers who earned salaries well above $100,000 based on performance payouts in excess of $25,000 in one single year. But those were the teachers that produced 95, 98% learning gains in one single year. And they deserve it. Some folks came up to me, some assistant principals, and even some principals said, how can you pay my teacher more than I'm making? Well, go buy a car. If you go to a car stand, most of the salespeople actually out-earn their managers. In the pharmaceutical industry, the salespeople usually out-earn their directors. What's wrong with that? I mean, you're the folks out there in a firing line. Why shouldn't the principal or a teacher out-earn an assistant superintendent or a deputy superintendent? If you hit everything right and you win above and beyond what anybody asked you for. So we need to ditch that myth as well, is that somehow the way we are paid needs to be absolutely in line with our pay grade. Cannot be. That needs to change. If it does not change, we will never be able to retain the very best teachers, the very best principals doing what they do. Because the old theory in the organizational charts with the boxes, right? The old theory is for you to make more money, you need to move to a different box. And I say, if you're very good in the box that you reside in now, we ought to pay you more on the basis of simply who you are, how good you are, and the miracles and magic you perform every single day. So we've been very busy in Miami-Dade. To give you an idea, I do believe in this reinvention, synchronicity of purpose, reinvention of function every single year. So every year I literally open up the curtains and I expose our community to the new programs. It's like the new product line for Miami-Dade County Public Schools. This year we are opening 30 new magnet programs in one single year. Last year we opened 25 different magnets. My idea is really to transform Miami-Dade County Public Schools into an all-choice district. Why? Folks, remember when I told you the tsunami is coming? Learn how to surf. Choice is here. If you do not embrace choice and actually surf the top of choice, where you're in control of your board, somebody else will do it for you. And that somebody else may actually create an altogether different set of schools, different district, driven by different rules. Arguably not necessarily for all kids or all teachers. So you need to lead choice. 30 different magnet programs in one single year. Now we're in the middle of the Olympics, and as I close, I'd like to have you reflect on this picture up there for a little bit. You probably don't recognize the faces, it's okay. And actually this picture was taken back in 2008 during the Beijing Olympics. A couple of things as you look up at that picture that always shouted out to me. Remember, synchronicity of purpose and action. Synchronicity of purpose and action. Now you can tell that you have some American sprinters there, right? There's another guy, I think he's from Trinidad, between the two of them there, running on his own lane. And this picture happened to have been taken during the 4x100 meter relay in the Beijing Olympics back in 2008. We went into those games feeling pretty American, meaning we are the best, the boldest, the strongest, the fastest. We're going to kick everybody's you know what. That's the way we showed up. And truth be told, individually, each one of these sprinters was the best in the world. America had the fastest 4 men on the surface of the earth that time. Individually, they could run 100 meters faster than anybody else. Faster than anybody else. But here's what happened. Sometimes running fast alone isn't good enough. Sometimes actually waiting a little bit for the person who believes in the mission, believes in your vision, leaving nobody behind, actually slowing yourself down a little bit so they can catch up, or better yet, sometimes pulling them up with you is more important. So we went there with the fastest 4 men on earth. And this is what happened. Now, a couple of additional things which has always mystified me when you look at this picture. Here's the most powerful nation on earth, the only superpower. And if you look at the picture, you see the guy from Trinidad? His nation's emblem is laser printed, very sharp. You see that TRI? Very sharp looking. It's actually laser printed into their outfits. The Americans, somebody forgot to print USA on their uniforms. So I can just picture these guys minutes before the race going back and forth. Hey, does somebody have a Sharpie? Does somebody have a marker? Because we've got to run this thing, and we're the fastest people on earth, and the most powerful nation on earth forgot one little detail, which was to laser print USA on the shirts. So please, give me a Sharpie because I need to mark this thing up. So they last minute marked with a marker, black marker, USA. You see it. It looks silly. And then the unthinkable happened. Each one of these guys who ran faster than anybody else, individually, could not get their act together. And they dropped the baton. They dropped the baton. The one running behind could not wait to pass this baton. You see his look of desperation, of disappointment. He knows the race is lost. And he ran so fast. You see his face, he knows all that exertion is going nowhere. Fastest on earth. They dropped the baton. They dropped the baton not because they were not skilled. They were individually skilled beyond anybody else on earth. They dropped the baton not because they did not have the motivation. They had plenty of motivation. They dropped the baton not because they were not trained and the best in class they were. They dropped the baton because they did not have a synchronicity of purpose. They did not know how to play together. They did not know how to connect around the one important thing we stand up for. I began my conversation with you about America somehow having lost its way. I'm reminded of this picture. We're all individually blessed, individually gifted, and individually great at something. But at some point, we ought to come together and be able to pass this baton without dropping it. That is a charge before us. Folks, nobody's going to market what you do or sell the work you do but you. You have a fundamentally important right and obligation to do so. And that you shall do. You will not repeat this. You will pass the baton of humanity up, not down. I read this book called The Greatest Generation, written by Tom Brokaw. It detailed beautifully the sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice that men and women during World War II paid, often even with their lives, as they stormed the beaches of Okinawa and Normandy. My father fought during World War II. He used to tell me those stories. The one thing I didn't like about the book is somehow it left me with this impression that the best days of America were behind us. That somehow the best generation has already lived. And here's where I think Mr. Brokaw is wrong. Number one, I met Miss Holmes. she will be the greatest generation. 2, I have met people like you, teachers of America, who show up, who stand up, and who speak up for everybody, the gifted, the non-gifted, the invisible, the fragile, the mute, the blind. You stand up and speak up for everybody. And because of that, I know that the best days of America are yet to be lived, because you're here, because you're strong, because God is with you, because you believe that the perfect day is not a perfect day until you've done something for somebody without any expectation of getting something back in return. Because you have that inner fire called that teacher's fire that does not allow you to sit still or sit quiet. Because you believe in the power of association. You're not intimidated by smart people. Actually, smart people make you stronger. Because you believe that there's a higher power around all of us. And you need to live up to that expectation. So my friends, I close by leaving you with a quote. And I always close my speaking engagements with this because it speaks so loudly to me. Actually, I'll give you 2, because I really like Jackie Pons. The first is by Albert Einstein. And I love Al. You know, he and I, at many levels. Number 1, we both taught physics. I think he was a little bit better than me. But he ain't around, so I don't know. But Albert Einstein was a man who lived a remarkable life. And he always sought what was called the unified field theory, the one theory of science and mathematics that would explain everything together, everything, from biology, physics, chemistry, everything. And towards the end of his life, not being able to reach, to basically break that code, he became a religious man. And one of the most powerful things he said is that the only life worth living is a life we live for others. Albert Einstein was not only a physicist, he was a teacher. He understood that better days would be lived because of his actions, because of his synchronicity of purpose. He made it his passion to pass the baton of humanity up. The other person who greatly impresses me, and his words were as true then as they are today, and about 56 years have elapsed, was actually Dr. Martin Luther King. What Dr. King said is that the arc of history bends towards justice. The arc of history bends towards justice. My friends, what Dr. King meant, he and I are close to, is that the arc of history does not bend by itself. It requires somebody to force it to bend towards justice. And the people who are about justice, those who produce justice, those who inspire justice for all are here today. So I thank you for the work you do. I thank you for the motivation and the inspiration you bring to the classroom of America every single day. And I thank you for passing the baton of humanity up. Thank you very much, and God bless you.